Thank you,
Good
Professor
afternoon.
Juarez. I have the honor of introducing Dr. María Orjuela Laverde. Dr. Alejandra Barriales Bush, and Dr. Soon-Young Kim, who from Montreal, Canada, will deliver the academic presentation called Empowering Learners, Boosting Agency and Engagement in Language Learning with Retrieval Practice. Next, I give the floor to Professor Beatriz Jiménez Lopez, who will read a brief biography of our speakers.
Thank you, Professor Gabby. Good afternoon, everyone. We are privileged to welcome back a team of esteemed colleagues and dedicated researchers from McGill University. Dr. Alejandra Barriales Bush is a senior faculty lecturer in Hispanic Studies at the Department of Languages, Literatures, and Cultures at McGill University. She received her PhD in Hispanic Literatures and Linguistics from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst in 2003. Her research in Hispanic literary studies focuses on the poetry and autobiographical writings on the exiles of the Spanish Civil War. In the field of teaching methodology, she is interested in exploring strategies that can enhance student learning and engagement through self-directed study techniques, self-assessment practices, and the integration of emerging technologies like artificial intelligence. Welcome, Professor Sandra.
Muchas gracias.
Dr. María Orjuela Laverde is a senior academic associate at McGill University's Teaching and Academic Programs Unit. She is a specialist in higher education teaching and learning with over 16 years of experience designing programs that support university instructors. Her research focuses on professional networks and communities of practice that enhance teaching and learning, and she's particularly interested in developing and studying programs that foster relationship building in higher education settings. Born in Bogota, she has lived in Montreal since 2008. Very welcome, Dr. María Orjuela.
Muchas gracias.
Dr. Soon-Young Kim is a senior faculty lecturer in German studies at the Department of Languages, Literatures, and Cultures at McGill University. Her teaching and research focus on fostering student engagement through student-centered approaches, including integrating self-reflection into participation assessment and incorporating technology into the foreign language classroom. More recently, she has been an active member of artificial intelligence working groups with a focus on academic integrity and the critical use of generative AI tools in teaching and learning. We are genuinely delighted to have you with us again, doctors. We are all looking forward to learning from your experiences and the implications of your findings. I'll now hand over the microphone so you can begin your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Can you make it, okay, great. Okay.
Recording in
So
progress.
I cannot see it very well. Bueno, buenas tardes. Como mencionó la profesora Beatriz Jiménez, mi nombre es María Orjuela Laverde, soy colombiana y esta presentación va a ser en inglés, pero quería darles un saludo especial en español. Espero que disfruten de la presentación, que aprendan. Esto es algo que nosotros también todavía estamos en el proceso de seguir aprendiendo muchas cosas, pero que sea aplicable y que ustedes encuentren estrategias que puedan utilizar en su clase. Y la idea es que sean estrategias que sean sencillas, que sean simples, que se puedan implementar sin mucha preparación, pero que tienen un gran impacto. Las preguntas las vamos a tomar al final, pero pues quería como darles un poquito de hacia dónde vamos. Ahora en inglés, I work with teaching and academic programs. That is an office, a unit here at McGill University, where our mission is to support and to help instructors in their teaching process, in their teaching journey. That's how I got the privilege and the honor of meeting Sandra and Sung Young, who we have been working for more. It's going to be more than 2 years. So I will let them introduce themselves and then we will get started.
Anyan, you want to go?
Sure, yes. As it was mentioned, I'm a senior faculty lecturer in the Department of Languages, Literatures, and Cultures and in the German Studies program. Sandra?
Okay. And otro saludito en español. Yo también soy Senior Faculty Lecturer en español y como ha dicho María, llevamos trabajando 2 años y es realmente un placer trabajar las 3 juntas y espero que disfruten de la presentación hoy sobre lo que estamos haciendo en nosotras 3. Muchas gracias.
So again, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to speak about enhancing students' agency and engagement in learning through retrieval practice. We are aware that we're using a lot of technical language in this title, but we hope that at the end you're able to understand what we mean by retrieval practice. However, I do want to provide a definition of the term agency that we have here in the title. The definition that we're using from different researchers is the following. So agency is the ability of a student to take control over their own learning. So it's how we want students to be responsible, to have that autonomy, of their learning and not waiting to be told like what to do, how to do it, but actually having that responsibility and that accountability. So I really wanted to highlight what we mean by agency. And next one, please. So today we'll be covering the following points. We're going to first, Sandra and Sung Young, they're going to describe the context in which they came across retrieval practice, the motivations behind why they wanted to try the different strategies that they're going to be sharing with you today. I'm going to provide a definition of retrieval practice, and the heart of this presentation, like the meat of it, it's going to be like the different strategies that are going to be shared with you, the examples of retrieval practice that both Sandra and Sung Young have designed and have implemented in their courses. Then we're going to provide a couple of comments and feedback that we gathered from students at the end of the term. I had the opportunity to talk to them and collect some information of what they perceive of the different strategies. And then we're going to open the table to the floor to some questions that you may have. So before we continue, if you have a pencil, pen, and a piece of paper, we're going to do some activities. So maybe just have some handy when the moment comes. Next, Sanyang.
Okay, so we would like to start by giving you some details about how we started working with retrieval practice and our pedagogical context. Sanjan and I noticed that over time, and more intensively when we came back from the pandemic, some students in our classes were having academic difficulties. So after we talked to these students, we were surprised because these students were not bad students. They were putting a lot of effort in the class, and we were really surprised. So we met with them and we asked them about their study methods. And they said, we asked them, okay, how do you study? And they mentioned, okay, I like to reread notes, highlight the textbook, or just study the night before the test. So Sanjana and I realized that these methods, according to researchers like Rediger and others, were not the most effective ones for long-term learning. So we decided to do something about this to address this issue, and we started a project that had three goals. The first one was we wanted to help students to study more effectively with methods that were based on the findings of cognitive science. We wanted the students to be more engaged in our classes, and third, we wanted the students to build their confidence. So instead of feeling overwhelmed or frustrated with the materials, we wanted them to address and to come to our course with a sense of agency and capability. That's how everything started.
So in our project, when we conducted this TLS-sponsored project on learning strategies, we involved our former students and current students. And our goals were, as you can see here, to identify what kinds of difficulties students experienced when they were in language learning classes, and also to identify helpful learning strategies that we could also gather and then share with future students in other classes. And our method was to do interviews with them and also to do surveys.
So when we met with the students, as Sanjan said, through surveys and interviews, we asked them, okay, what are the most effective study strategies for you? And this is the list of strategies that they mentioned. They said brain dump or blurting, which means writing down everything you remember from a lesson without checking your notes. They said that that was very useful. Also, the traditional methods of flashcards, either by hand or digital flashcards. They mentioned that rewriting the class notes, the study notes was useful. Studying groups, they mentioned that. Reviewing and preparing materials before the class or reviewing them after class. And some of them mentioned that they like to create practice exercises or to use the ones that we offer them through our learning management system on the platform we use for our courses. So when we were discussing these findings with Maria, who was helping us with the project, we realized that some of these, Maria pointed out to us that some of these strategies had something in common. They share a common feature, and that was that these strategies are all different forms of retrieval practice. And Maria introduced us to this concept, and that's how we started to explore it.
She also introduced us to this great book called Powerful Teaching by Pooja Agarwal and Patricia Bain. This book features the following tools, the tools that they call power tools. The first one is retrieval practice, which is recalling previously learned information. The second one is spacing, which means spreading retrieval practice, this kind of active recalling over time. And the third one is interleaving, mixing retrieval of similar information to help learners recognize the particularities of individual concepts, and also therefore to promote discrimination. And finally, feedback-driven metacognition, which means reflecting on what one knows and what one does not know. Okay, sorry. I'm trying to go there.
Perfect. So talking to Sandra and talking to Sang-Yang, I really recommend the book and we have those resources. We have a list of resources and we can share them with you afterwards, so you can see where we learned all this material. But what we really like about this is that they are researchers in the field of cognitive science, but they're also instructors. So they're able to bring those two, like the practitioner and the research perspective, and they're extremely what's the word, practical and tools, right? So it's actually a nice book to read, and then you can, as I said at the beginning, we want you to go home, and this book does that as well, is have something specific that you can use in class. So it's again backed by research. It's all research and evidence informed, but very, very practical and easy to implement. So yeah, can we go to the next one? Okay, so I'm going to do an activity. As I said, I wanted you to have a pen and piece of paper, and I want you to write the phone number that you used to have when you were growing up, when you had a landline? Remember when we had ring, those type of phones? I want you to write the phone number of your where you grew up, yeah, home or whatever you want to call it. Perfect. Now, I want you to write the phone number of someone close to you at this moment. So it can be a sister, it can be a friend. I want you to write that number. So we did this exercise. We have done it a couple of times, and I guess you know where I'm going with this. But for a lot of us, it was very easy to write the number when we of the phone when we were growing up, right? When we had to dial that number from memory. But when we have to write the number of those, I don't know, your partner, your kid, we are going blank. It's like I have no idea what my son's phone number is. So there's a reason for that. And that's what we're going to be introducing today. So I want to, with a lot of the examples, we're going to be giving some of the definitions. I want you to go back to this idea of why do I remember the phone number when I was growing up, but I have no idea what's the phone number of someone I talk to like maybe every day. So what is retrieval practice? So retrieval practice is a learning strategy. So that's important. This is a learning strategy, something that we want our students and learners to do that involves actively recalling information from memory rather than just rereading or reviewing it. And here I think the important concept is actively recalling. So it's that process of the student actually doing the work, right? It's very different when you're learning something if you have to just close your eyes and okay, let's try to remember what it is that we talked for the past 2 minutes. It's different than if I'm just, as an instructor, I'm talking to you and students think that they're learning, right? They're listening there, but they're not necessarily retaining the information that can be used afterwards. So again, that's what retrieval practice is, that active recalling of information from memory. Next one. So this is an analogy that I really, really like. If you can show the quote. And it's because when we talk about connections, we're talking about neural connections, right? So what's happening in our brain and how those connections can be very strong or not that strong. How can we, the stronger the connections, our neural connections, like conexiones neuronales, the stronger that they are, the more retention there is, like long-term retention. So this analogy here, I'm gonna read it. I think it's really, really nice. It says that establishing new connections, again, neural connections, is like blazing a trail through a thick forest, which is a great deal of work. But every time a trail is used, it becomes more established and easier and faster to follow. So imagine like you have a forest, right? And there's nothing. Nobody has walked through that forest. You want to go from point A to point B. You kind of have to walk around and how do I get there? But then when you start seeing, right? When we start seeing those in the forest or I don't know, jungle or whatever, we can see, or even here, like you can see that the path, the more that people walk around it, like through it, the more the easier it is to see it, and also the longer it's going to be there. So they're like paths that have been for years and years. It's again because people walk through them over and over. That's the same thing with our neural connections. The more you practice something, the more that you recall something, you're bringing that information to your working memory from the long-term memory, and the connection is becoming stronger and stronger. The stronger the connection, the longer you're going to have it there. So this, again, this is a really nice, I hope that it makes sense, but it's a nice way of kind of understanding that concept of what's going on in our brains while we are learning something and when we are recalling. So as we said at the beginning, retrieval practice, we want this to be something easy to implement, and activities can be very easy to design, to conduct. They don't have to be anything like high stakes. Actually, it could be like a short quiz, something can be actually something not graded. And it's something that did not take time from you as an instructor to design it, but also students to implement the strategies. So again, any activity that requires students to bring information to mind from memory, that is retrieval practice. That's retrieval based learning. So we have some examples here. And again, the presentation today, like the meat of it, the heart of it, are the examples that Sandra and Sung Young are going to present. But here are examples that you can be discussing something in class. You take a minute and you say, okay, now I want you to turn around and explain the concept that I just introduced to one of your colleagues. Or you can take a minute and I want you to draw a concept map. I want you to write from memory what we just, I don't know, what were the main concept we discussed. So again, that concept of, okay, I want you to do it as a student. You're not gonna, I don't want you to rewrite. I don't want you, sorry, to reread. I don't want you to listen to me again, but I want you to actually bring that back to your memory, like working memory. That's what retrieval practice is. So I'm gonna quickly give an example of a study that's actually very interesting. And again, all these resources are going to be at the end of the presentation, so we are happy to share them with you. But what this study says is it was conducted in 2006 in the US, and students these are high university students, they were giving a reading. They had to read something about the sea, I think was, I don't recall very well, I don't remember very well what the reading was about, but students, they all made the reading, and then they were divided into groups. One, the control group, they were asked to read the document again. The other group was asked not to read it, but they were tested on that document. 5 minutes later, they were all tested, and those who had reread, actually, they did a bit better than those who had just read it once and then had been tested. However, 2 days later, you can see that the results were different. Students who had read the material and then had been tested scored higher than those who had reread it twice. And the same thing a week later. So again, what we're aiming with when we're teaching is for information to be retained in long-term memory. I'm sure, again, we come back to class, we ask, okay, do you remember what we did yesterday? And blank faces, right? And people like, I do not remember what it was. And a lot of time, it's not because, I don't know, whatever reason, it's mainly because the information was not saved properly. So it kind of disappeared, if we can put it like that. So this, I think it's a nice example of how what we want to have like long-term memory by testing. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It's just asking some questions after you introduce the material and having students, again, recall. That's what retrieval practice is.
Okay, now we're going to get to the practical demonstration of the kinds of strategies we introduced in the year 2004 to 2005, so fall 2024 to winter 2025. And so 9 strategies. And we start with the first one, which is drawing and labeling pictures. It's one of the examples also that Maria had mentioned. And in my German class, I regularly have students actually label diagrams like these. This is, for example, from a beginner class. So at first, students will have studied the vocabulary with the traditional method of having a list, for example. But then when they come to class, I would hand this out to them and say, label these body parts. Well, what do you think it is? But they actually have to write it. And then step 2 is checking the answers all together in class. So students do it individually, and then we check together. So, and we repeat this a few times throughout the unit, because repeating it encourages also long-term retention, and it can model effective study techniques that students can also apply at home. So they don't just have a list that they read again and again, but then they have to apply it and give themselves easy quizzes. It helps them to memorize details. And this kind of diagram can be used actually across levels, depending on what you're doing.
So the The first retrieval practice that I would like to share with you is how to create a content map through guiding questions with your students. So I was teaching a year ago, I was teaching an intensive intermediate course, and it was a great opportunity to try out the retrieval practice for the first time, because we were using a new textbook. And as you can see here, for example, for the chapter of health and well-being, salud y bienestar, you can see that each chapter has a long list of new words. So it was challenging for students, especially because we have a flipped classroom in which we assign students material to do as homework. Okay, they have to study material as homework, and then they have to come to class to practice it. So I thought it would be challenging for students to remember all these words, to learn this new vocabulary, and I thought it would be great to try retrieval practice and ask students to retrieve these words in class. So I designed an animated PowerPoint and that I use with the whole class. Okay, so I started the class with a question. Okay, so I asked, okay, si tenemos un resfriado o la gripe o un virus similar, ¿qué síntomas solemos tener? Okay, it was about health and well-being. Okay, so if we have a cold, the flu, what are the symptoms? As you can see here, we have in purple the new vocabulary already in the question. And as the students were giving me the answers, and then I will project the answers as well on the slide, okay? After the students had given me some of the answers. I continue like that for with a few slides, like 8 slides, more or less. And again, it was a session of questions and answers from the students. And at the end, I compile all the questions, all my questions and the students' answers in this content map that I show to the students. So this is a very low pressure, interactive exercise, an activity very easy to do and to create, that encourages active recall. It's very useful because questions force students to recall the information, and the combination of my questions and their answers create a narrative that help students make sense of the new information, because through these brief narratives created by questions and answers, we can highlight the connections of the new words to meaningful context. And last but not least, I'm modeling for students what they can do not only for the chapter on health and well-being, but with other chapters throughout the semester. So this is, I'm trying to teach them how they can address the challenging study of new vocabulary in the course. A few classes later, when they were about to forget the vocabulary, I insisted on this content map, on using this content map. And this time, it was not with the whole class. This time, I divided the class in small groups, and I gave each group an empty copy, or almost empty, a blank copy of this content map. And I asked each group to try to fill it out with as many words as they could remember, just to test how much they were remembering. So this type of activity, again, it was collaborative, no stake at all. I mean, very low pressure, but it's great for students to see how much they can remember. So it becomes a very useful self-assessment tool. And it involves spacing, which means spreading retrieval practice over time. And it becomes a great tool for them to use before a test for individual study. And for me as instructor, when I collect, here you see a sample, when I collect what they wrote, I can see how much they remember and which parts I need to reinforce through my teaching in the following classes.
The third strategy we'd like to present is active recall through mind maps. So we'll do an activity with you now. So what do you associate with the term retrieval? So could you please type it in chat? And actually, I need to see the chat too somewhere. Or if you're on Facebook, I was wondering if the moderators could see if anyone has written anything. So we'll give it another maybe 10 seconds and then move on. Great, thank you, Leticia and Ana Maria and Beatriz. Recall, remember, you wrote to obtain, recover, bring back ideas, sensations, or images. That's great. So we also wanted to see what concepts stayed with you. And Marie, you said find. Wonderful. So we'll move on to the next slide. So I'd like to talk about some of the key benefits or features and benefits of mind maps. Here are a few key specific traits of mind maps. They're built around the single central idea, and they form a network of related ideas that radiate from the central concept, as you can see in this particular mind map example. This activity supports also branching into associated subtopics in a non-linear fashion, which facilitates free form brainstorming. So for example, in this one, you can see that Urlaub means vacation. And then I have subtopics that branch out. One is die Kleidung, because I would have asked my students, what do you associate with vacation? So they might think about clothing, geography, modes of transportation, and the weather. And then there are words that they associate with each category. So you have these clusters of ideas that radiating from the central concept of vacation. So this kind of activity allows me to get a better picture of what students already know about a topic. And the benefits are that this can be used as an introductory activity at the beginning of a new unit or a new class, and it helps you to activate prior knowledge of students and also to uncover learners' baseline of understanding, so that you know what kind of skills and knowledge the students bring to a particular class on a certain topic. And you can also have you can also reinforce learning through spaced retrieval by bringing back this mind map activity again for review before a chapter test, for example, or later on before you move on to another related unit. And then since mind maps help students recall ideas and knowledge through associations, this activity facilitates contextualized learning, just like the concept map you've seen, and it helps them to understand concepts better by making connections of related information. Sorry, I'm trying to move on. Okay.
So the next activity that we want to share with you was designed with, I designed this activity with a very specific goal in mind, which was to keep exploring the benefits of combining retrieval practice with spacing. And again, spacing means spreading retrieval practice over time, okay, through different lessons. So I decided to do that because I had to teach a very tricky verb tense for my beginner class, which is the preterite, okay? And it's tricky and challenging because, as you know, it has many patterns of irregular forms. And what made for students particularly challenging, what it was particularly challenging for students when studying the preterite tense in my course, it was that we had the winter break, the vacation, in the middle of the practice. So I knew that after the break, students will not remember easily the forms that they had studied before the vacation. So then I decided to create two spaced out retrieval practices, and I'll show you the first one that I designed for the first practice before the vacation, before the break. It's very similar to the one I showed you earlier. It's again an animated PowerPoint for the whole class, to use with the whole class. And again, it's a combination of my questions with the students' answers. Okay, so I will ask the students, okay, do you remember how many groups do we have in the preterite, okay, as irregular forms? And they will answer, and then the answers will be confirmed with me projecting the answers on the PowerPoint. So it was a session again of questions and answers, but it was not just any question, because my questions were carefully planned and thought, because the students' answers will have to create an outline of the information that students had to learn. Okay, so it really reinforced the information, the materials they had to study on their own. After the break, we did a similar practice, but this time the activity started with an individual retrieval practice. With a similar chart, after the vacation, I asked each student to try to retrieve all the forms. I gave them 5 minutes, and they had to write down all the forms they could remember. And after that, we corrected, we went over the answers all together as a whole class, okay, in big group. So there are many benefits to an activity like this. It really activates what Agarwal and other authors like Lang call it the testing effect or the retrieval effect, which refers to the finding that when you retrieve information from memory without checking your notes, as you do, for example, in a test, okay, you don't have access to the notes. When you are trying to retrieve the information without checking your notes, that's more beneficial and more effective than just rereading or re-studying the information again. And it also combats the illusion of fluency or the illusion of knowing. Some students think that they know more than they actually do. So with an activity like this, they can compare what they thought they knew and what they actually know. And then the delays are very important, because the retrieval practice becomes more effective when students are about to forget. So insisting on having more than one retrieval practice over time, that's very beneficial for students. For me, this was not very time consuming, only 10 minutes in the class. It didn't involve any extra corrections because I didn't collect anything. And for students, it gave them, again, a model of something they could use for individual study. I saw my students using the chart in other classes after we did it in class.
Right, the fifth strategy is active recall through polling. So we'd like to do a polling activity. And, okay, thank you for launching it. So once it's launched, please choose a technique that involves retrieval practice. What do you think? We're doing a mini quiz through polling. Or should I launch it?
Yes, please, Sanjang.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, let me. Okay. So which of these techniques involve retrieval practice? Is it brain dump, highlighting relevant information, flashcards, rereading notes? Or we also have practice quizzes or polling questions.
Do we get the QR code?
Oh, sorry, I thought I had launched. Oh, I see. Oh, yes, I can.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah, hold on. Oh, for those who are not here. Okay, sorry. Yes, I'm just going to launch that. Oh, sorry. Here you are. Is that working?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we'll maybe just give it another 10 seconds again. Okay, I think I'll end the poll now and then we'll look at the results. Okay. All right. So can you see the results? I think. Yes, okay. No, I think I'm just still sharing the screen, right?
Yeah. Should we stop it or?
Yeah, I'm trying to see how to share the polling results. Okay, I'll stop that and then. Oh, you can see the result. Thank you, Mari. Okay, so you had said of 7 responses, we have brain dump, highlighting relevant information, flashcards, rereading notes, practice quizzes, and pulling questions on content from previous classes. So of these, actually highlighting relevant information is not an active, or not retrieval practice, because it's not active, it's rather passive. But the other ones are actually part of retrieval practice. So we'll just move on with the slides again. Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay, desktop too. Okay, so now we'll move on with the presentation. So active recall through pulling activities can encourage students to actively recall or retrieve learned materials. And it also helps to break the routine in class, because, you know, just like here, after we talked at you for a while, you actually had to actively do something. So it also does not cause any stress for students, because it's a no-stakes activity. They're not graded on that. And it helps to identify what students already know and what they don't know. And it gives students immediate feedback. And not only the students, but it gives us instructors immediate feedback. And it's a good teaching moment, because students are curious about the answer. In fact, as soon as you ask a question, students will perk up, and you get their attention, which means they are ready to learn.
Okay, and now I would like to share an activity that I have been using for many years without realizing that this is also a type of retrieval practice. And I call it in-class collaborative quizzes. This is, for this activity, I want students to work in pairs, because they need to take turns to test each other. Okay, and each student, student A, student B, each student has access to a different quiz through a QR code or through the link. Okay, this is actually what I project in my class. Okay, when they see this slide, they take the phone and they know they have to do to test each other. Okay. So this slide shows what each student sees when they access the code, okay? For example, let's imagine that we are a student A, so we need to take turns, and when it's our turn, we'll test the other student, okay? We have the student B doesn't have access to our quiz, okay? That's a secret for the student. So we are a student A, we have to test a student B, we have the prompt there in black. This is again to retrieve the forms of the preterite tense in my class. So if I am a student A, I'm testing a student B, I will say, okay, give me the form for comer for to in the preterite. And I see the answer key in blue. Okay, the other student who is taking the quiz doesn't have access to this information. So then when it's the turn of student B, they reverse the roles. Okay, so this there are many benefits to this activity. This is something I do throughout the semester many times, because it can be used and adapted to review many different things. I use it for verb forms, but also to use the direct and indirect object pronouns, to give definitions, vocabulary. It can be used to review many different components in the class, but there are no grades involved, and that makes the activity that is very interactive. It makes it fun and engaging. Students feel like this is like a game, and they love it. As soon as they see this on the slide, they take out their phones, and they are really excited about doing this type of activity. It's very interactive, and it's collaborative. I really insist on this point. I tell the students, please don't make this a competition. When you play the role of the instructor, you really have to help the other student. If the person doesn't know the answer, please give the person some tips, some questions, until they are able to retrieve the information. And I have seen my students sharing explanation tips on the materials, which is very, very nice. And I cannot be with all the groups at the same time, but what I like to do is after they finish the quiz, I like to have a post-activity brief discussion to go over common mistakes and to ask them about what they find as the most challenging points. So that gives me an opportunity to go over errors and to give formative feedback to my students.
Okay. Strategy number 7 is a brain dump, and I'd like to do a brain dump activity with you. So how many retrieval strategies that we presented to you so far, 1 to 6, can you list? And I'd like you to write it, type it into a chat, or if you're on Facebook, I guess you can also comment there, but type it, but don't press enter yet. I'll give you about 10, 20 seconds to do this. And then once I say done, enter, everyone enters. Everyone writes it. So we call it a waterfall activity. So how many retrieval strategies do you remember? So just type it, but don't press enter yet. Okay, maybe. All right, could you all press enter? And let's see what you have written. So I see, Gabriela, you wrote draw and label pictures. Okay, we have quiz, brain dump, content map, diagrams, flashcards, wonderful, maps. Yes, quizzes, create a content map. Great, okay, and polls. Okay, thank you. So, wow, there are more coming, thank you. Yeah, brain dump, quiz, mind maps, and polls. All right. So you've retained a lot. So this is a kind of activity that we like to do often in our classes. I think this is probably my favorite one of all of them because it requires very little prep time. You can do this at any point in the in your activities, in your class that you've designed, and it allows for checking comprehension for most topics. Can be on vocabulary, can be on grammar, can be on key concepts, on a literary text if you like, and it pairs effectively with spaced learning because you could also, for example, pause in the middle of a class and say, okay, so what are 2 things that you remember, or what are all the verbs that you remember, or what are the past participles you remember, and so on. Or you can also have it at the end of the class and say, what are the 2 things you remember? Actually, I'm already talking about one of our strategies that we'll be doing later. But the brain dump activity, I often do it actually at the beginning of a class to say, what do you remember from a previous class? And it's also quite effective when you do it on a Monday and say, what do you remember from Friday? So it models also strategy for self-study because I will tell students, for example, or advise them, when you study, pause for a moment and then do a brain dump activity and write down everything you remember from your study session instead of going on for the entire hour. Take a little break and quiz yourself.
And the next activity I want to share with you is what I call the first week ticket. Here I was not very original because I was inspired when reading the book that we mentioned before, Powerful Teaching. I was inspired by this activity you see here on the left that Agarwal and Bain call Power Ticket. So as you can see here on the activity on the left, the original one is for a history class, and a Power Ticket is an activity that wants to be a tool, is designed to be a tool that encourages students to retrieve key concepts, key information across multiple lessons. So it really reinforces learning over time. I really like this idea, and I thought that I will give it a try after the first week of my beginner course. And that's what I did. You have it on the right for my Spanish for beginners class. So we had had just only one week of classes, as you can see, from January 6th to January 9th, okay, 4 days, because it's an intensive class. And I decided to prepare 6 questions that sum up the most essential information that I have taught my students during those 4 meetings, okay? So now I'll show you a sample of from one student. And you can see here, okay, that the student, this person leaves a question as a blank, okay. This person cannot remember how to reply to that question. So this is an activity that is very easy to prepare, okay, and it really goes beyond memorization, because the students have to put grammar into use. And it gives the students, especially beginners, a sense of achievement. They can see how much they are able to remember in only 1 week of classes. But at the same time, for me, it's a writing activity that I can use for diagnostic purposes. Like here, I see a blank, so that tells me, okay, there is some confusion here. Especially for real beginners, students who have not taken Spanish before. So that tells me, as instructor, I need to go back to that question. Okay, I need to reteach that information. So even if you don't want to collect this, because that means that you'll have extra corrections, you can still correct it orally with the whole class, and it will be very, very effective, because you can go over common mistakes with your students.
Okay, oops. Sorry. So the final strategy is 2 things. And I'd like you to reflect on that too, and think of the 2 things you learned today. And please feel free to write it in the chat when you're ready, or also on Facebook. Or if you don't have means of responding directly to us, just write it for yourself, please. So just about 10 seconds. Okay, what are some of the things that you learned today? Okay, okay, oh, thank you, Beatriz. That we need to help students learn by recalling, Ana Maria, the importance of modeling strategies for learning. Thank you. And then Raquel wrote the different ways to use retrieval activities such as flashcards and maps. Great, wonderful, thank you very much. So we'll move on. Oh, one more. Over time, it's better to read once and test after that than rereading twice and then testing. Great. Yes, that's from the beginning of the presentation. And also, Mari, you wrote new approaches to remembering and consolidating knowledge in Islam, keyword to get their knowledge. Thank you. So 2 things is a great strategies, and the possible usage is to connect what you are learning from a current class to a previous class as an entrance ticket. Another way of using 2 things is to review important points from the current lesson as an exit ticket. So what are the 2 things you're taking away from today? And then it can also be combined with add one more thing to make it collaborative. And the way it works is that since usually students do it individually and they write 2 things, they turn to their neighbor, they swap their papers, and they write one more thing maybe that's not on that list. And then it also gives opportunities to students to discuss this together. The benefits are that it engages all students by ensuring that that there's individual participation, because as Bain and Agarwal also point out, or Agarwal and Bain, that when students actually are engaged individually, then they are going to remember also better, rather than asking a rhetorical question, to the class. The chances of them remembering something is actually lower. And it's also, again, another quick comprehension check. There's no grading required because you're discussing the feedback immediately with the class, and it supports collaborative activities.
Okay, so now we would like to finish by giving you a summary of the key benefits that we have found while using retrieval practices in our classes. First of all, we feel that it really helps, retrieval practice really helps the students break the illusion of fluency, of the illusion of knowing. You know, that feeling that students have, they feel like they have mastered something just because it feels familiar, but actually when they do these activities, they can see what they are missing in their learning, okay, and where their knowledge gaps are. And it really makes students more accountable, because when students know that they will be asked to retrieve, they tend to engage more consistently with the material, and that reinforces their responsibility for their own learning. And it's very easy to implement these activities. That's something that we really want to insist on today, because it doesn't take a long time or a lot of extra preparation, no corrections. You can start doing a retrieval practice and implementing these practices into your own existing class routines very, very easily. And that's very important for instructors.
Right. And because it necessitates action on the individual student, or from the individual student, it helps to involve and engage all students. And it facilitates a different type, or all the different types of engagement that Maria has mentioned at the beginning also of the presentation, on the student content level, also student level, and also at the student instructor level. And because also of its low stakes or no stakes nature of the activities, it's not a tool for evaluating learning, but rather for enhancing it.
Great. So because we have been working together, we wanted to see what type of feedback students had regarding the strategies, but we wanted, because I'm not the one teaching the courses, we thought it makes sense if I go and talk to the students, so not the instructors directly, but someone who doesn't have that emotional connection with the students. So for me to go and talk to them, we did an activity where we gathered like what they were, how they were using the activities that had been introduced. But we wanted to know if they were using it for the language courses, but also if they were using it for other courses, right? Because that's something that both Sandra and Sung-Young really wanted, is we want students to gather those skills that they will be able to implement in other courses that they're taking and during their life. It's as we mentioned briefly at the beginning, is how students, well, maybe I actually did not mention this, but how we assume that students know how to study and they know how to implement learning skills, but actually most of them have not been taught those skills directly. So all the strategies that Sandra and Sung-Young implemented, they were very explicit in saying, this is the reason why we're doing this. These are the benefits. So again, I went to the classroom, I talked to them. We received a lot of feedback, and it was all very, very positive. But we just brought these comments because we did not have time to go over more comments. But one of them was that some of them said regarding retrieval practices that they were aware of what they were doing now. So they're like, oh yeah, when we make flashcards, we are doing a retrieval practice. And all others were saying, we started implementing some of these strategies in some of our courses. Or, for example, that after class, they studied a little bit, and then during the weekend, they made that flashcard. So you can see that there's a bit of the time difference, and they were able to recall, okay, what it is that we need to study. Regarding engagement, this was something also very interesting, is that how they weren't engaged with the course, but they felt that they actually had to do something. So they were not just passively there waiting to get all the information like dumped into their brain, but actually the instructors, both Sandra and Sung Young, they made a pause, and it required them to actually, and the student said this, like, to dig in our brain to find the grammatical rules and content. So again, it's not that they said this is what the grammatical content is, but rules are, but you have to go and look for it somewhere in your brain, and that made them feel like active and engaged with their courses. And finally, and this is one of my favorite, is how the student who wrote this said that they will definitely use brain dump on their own and will be using it for other courses where relevant. So courses, for example, where they had to, there are a lot of memorization. So how can I, again, as Sung Young said, it's very simple. You can just take a couple of minutes and let's write down everything that I remember from a specific class or specific session. So again, these are strategies, as you saw, they do not take too much time. They do not take too much effort in planning. And it's not that easy, right? I mean, we ask you, okay, give us the ideas of from the 6 strategies that we have described so far, which ones do you recall? And we think we know which ones they are, but when we're asked, it's like, oh, wait, I just recall 3. I just recall 2. So it's because that illusion of knowledge that Sandra was talking about, it's real. We think we know something. We think that we're saving that information somewhere, but when we're asked, it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know. So again, these are strategies are impactful, that they are easy to implement, and that research has shown that have a very a lot of impact in students' learning.
I just wanted to show this first before we show you the question, comments, suggestions. So these are some of the references we'd be happy to share with you too.
So we're gonna open the floor to any questions, comments, suggestions. Hopefully, we can continue the conversation, maybe next time in Mexico when the weather is nicer. But please feel free to raise your hand. I see that there's a hand raised there, Leticia.
Yes, thank you. Very interesting. Thank you very much for teaching us different ideas in order for us to help our students. And here I would like to read some participations from Facebook because we didn't mention them before. And we have Misak Andrade Luna, who wanted to participate in the poll, but the poll was not available in Facebook. So sorry, Misak, but thank you for attending. And Misak, when you asked, Sanyong asked what we had learned, she answered, I think what you manage, for example, brain dump and retrieval. And there is another person here, Professor Rosendo Rodriguez. He has 2 questions. The first one is, what is the process of feedback that you have followed in the retrieval activities? And the second question, is feedback necessary or not after putting into practice a retrieval activity in the class?
You want to start, Sanjan, or do I start? Or?
Sure, yeah. I thank you very much, first of all, for participating and for all the thoughtful questions. I'd like to maybe address the feedback part right away. It plays a central role actually in all the research that we have read. If you ask a question, you probably want an answer, and then what does it serve? Actually, it's also to have to engage in a dialogue with the students, but also to give them, not to leave them in the dark. The advantage to all these retrieval activities that we have shown you, they can be done quickly, but also the main purpose is actually to get feedback immediately so that we know where we stand. Also, feedback helps also, again, according to the research we have delved into, to actually also form the neural pathways too, because we don't want to lead them astray. And also it gives them the feedback that they're on the right path, to go with Maria's path analogy earlier too, so that they keep going in the same path, so it can also help them retain things better over long term.
No, I agree with everything Sanjay is saying. I think I will insist on having formative feedback. Okay, it's not just when students think of feedback, they think many times of a grade. Okay, but they don't need to receive a grade to receive good feedback or effective feedback. Okay, sometimes it's a comment about what they are doing great. I think they need to hear what they are doing well, and then tell them what they need to correct. Okay, or what they are missing. But I think it has to be both focusing on what they are missing and also what they are doing well in the class. I think that really helps them become more engaged and motivated to continue learning.
Thank you.
Doctors, we have 2 more questions. The first one is, how frequently should retrieval practice be used to maximize long-term retention?
I just would like to just say as often as possible.
I will say the same thing.
All the time. Yeah.
Yeah, and in different ways. I think it's important to be dynamic, okay, to break the routine with different practice, surprise the students, okay, with different strategies as often as you can, I think. Yeah.
And I think as you showed, it doesn't have to take too long, right? You can take 30 seconds, and that break also helps consolidate knowledge, because that's something that a lot of the research in neuroscience, in cognitive science, in the learning sciences that shows that you are introducing some topic. If you just give a couple of seconds, people can, right, make those connections, and then you can continue. And it can be, okay, take a minute, just think about what we just talked about, or write 2 things, turn to your neighbor, say, so it doesn't have to take too long. I'm sorry. But it has an impact. It has a lot of impact in their learning. And you can even explain it. I think that's something important, that you have to be explicit to the students, like, why are we doing this, right? Because otherwise they're going to be like, oh, what's going on here, that the professor keeps on asking. But if you're intentional of the purpose of this is for you to be able to consolidate their knowledge, they get more involved and understand the why.
And I just wanted to add there quickly, I find that my students are already used to that. It's become a routine now in my classes, so that they're alert, they expect it. So if I say, okay, brain dump, and then suddenly you just see them like grab a pen, or if I say this, they're like, okay, 2 things. Okay, what have we learned? So they know it's coming, and so I think it becomes a part of a very productive routine.
Thank you, doctors. And there's another question. What challenges or limitations have you observed in using retrieval practice, if you have noticed some?
That's a very good question. I think one thing that at least I still have to work on is to try to engage all the students in the class, okay, at the same level, okay, so, because sometimes some students are tend to be more engaged than others. So and as Sanjan said, I think if you make them to get used to do retrieval practice, that facilitates, okay, getting to the same level, all the students at once. But I think the more you do it, the closer you get to having all the students engaged in the class at the same time.
Right. I also find similar thing, except I think I have to work on varying my activities a bit more. I have some of my favorite ones, but for example, with the concept maps, I'd like to try that more, because I find certain recall activities require more preparation on my part. And so I find my own hesitation, I would say, just because of my own expectation. I think that's one of the challenges when I first started with this. And as Maria mentioned, when you start to explain to yourself explicitly why you're doing it, I find it helps to break down your own inhibition. And if you if you think, oh, how do I change this? I mean, if you even change the wording from how do I change this and reform it to how do I tweak it? I find that really helps. And this is something that I keep telling myself again and again. And I had referenced Leng before, but just asking a question. But then how do you ask a question? You know, instead of saying, okay, class, today we're going to talk about the preterite, say, okay, what are the tenses that we have learned so far? You got their attention. So I think this is, if you want to try retrieval practice, thinking of questions is, I think, a good beginning.
Thank you, doctors, for your answers. And we got another one that is in the chat. Are there other strategies to develop retrieval practice, or is the list of strategies just provided us with, it includes the most common?
I think there are more, but oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead if you want, Sanjana.
No, please.
Okay. I mean, these are common retrieval practices. Okay, I don't know if they are the most common, but they are definitely seen in all books about this topic. One strategy that, for example, we didn't mention, but we use in our classes, for example, to prepare practice quizzes for our students on the platform we use for learning. And I have prepared a lot of practice quizzes for my students just to take. They don't involve any grading. It's not for points or anything. It's just for them to get used to remembering the information. And I have seen that more and more students are doing those because I think they find them very useful. Before taking a real assignment, they like that. So, and that takes some time to prepare, but once you have done those practice quizzes, you can use them in every time you teach a course. And I think students appreciate having the opportunity to do those practice quizzes on their own. I don't know, Sanjan, if you have any other.
No, I think I was going to mention the quizzes too.
Yeah.
The ones that you mentioned, the no stakes quizzes. I think that's very important. I think that's what Argawal and Bain mentioned. I'd highly recommend, like as Maria mentioned, looking through that book because they come from different disciplines. I mean, one teacher is actually, Bain is a middle school teacher. Argawal teaches at a university as a researcher. But I find that they cover different kind of varieties, I mean, disciplines. And for example, I mean, I love the way that Sandra adapted the power ticket to her language class, but from a history class. So if you look at the examples that they have, I think you'll get more sense of, you know, the things that could be adapted to your class.
And Agarwal and Bain, they have a website. The link is on the slide when I was explaining the power ticket. They have a bank of suggestions and ideas that you can adapt and implement in your classes. They have many useful suggestions for all types of instructors in different disciplines. So that's very useful.
Thank you, doctors. Our next question is, how can retrieval strategies be differentiated for learners with varying proficiency levels within the same class?
Sandra, do you want to get started?
Let's see. I'm reading the question, how can be differentiated for learners within, I think that really is connected to the comment I made before, that sometimes it's challenging to get to all the students at the same level at the same time. I think here, one thing is what you do in class, but maybe it will be useful to have additional retrieval practices prepared for the students to do on their own out of the class, and invite them to encourage them to use those activities on their own to try to get to the same level on which others are. That's an idea, okay? Maybe we will have to think more about this question, but
can I jump there? Because I think there's some strategies that can be like generic in terms of, so there's this one that I really like. It's called I forgot, it's like the triangle, the square, and the circle. I think it's, so the idea is like the exit tickets. Maybe some of you have heard about exit tickets, that at the end of the class, you can say, please write, as like I said, the 2 things that you learned today, or many of the strategies that were shared today here. But what this one does is it says, okay, in the triangle, write 3 things that now make sense, right, for you, like 3 things. And they have to go over them. They have to kind of think about, okay, what is it that we talked about today? And what are 3 things that now make sense, that I understand? The circle, what is something that I'm still kind of wondering, right? What is something that I still don't understand? That forces them to think about what was introduced in class and what they didn't understand. And the square is, if I'm not wrong, okay, what is something that you agree on? So maybe not apply for language courses, but it can apply to other. So now write 4 things that you're like, oh yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. No? So again, this activity is what they force students to think about what it is that we did in class. So it maybe doesn't matter which level you are at, because you are introducing a skill that they will have to go over what they know. And again, as the question that you had before of in terms of feedback, that's where maybe the more personalized feedback can come based, because a lot of students, instructors I've seen implement this strategy, and then the next class they come and say, hey, I saw that a lot of you are struggling with this, or I saw that some of you learned about this. So you kind of make it that type of more personalized. But again, these generic strategies make students like think of their at their own level. I know it's tricky, but I think thinking about it generically can address the question you had in terms of different levels.
I also want to add that group work, collaboration is very important to try to get the students to the same level. They can help each other while doing retrieval practices, collaborative retrieval practice. I have seen students sharing tips, explanations, and that also help them advance in their progress as well.
Right. And I haven't really used it to differentiate different strategies for different proficiency. But what I've noticed is that these kinds of activities help me as a diagnostic tool to know who's more advanced, who needs more help. So this helps me, actually gives me more like data or information for pairing up or forming groups too.
Thank you, doctors. And our last question. You are mentioning a platform. What platform are you using to deliver retrieval practice, and how do you do it?
I think the platform we mentioned is the
LMS.
The learning management system that we use at McGill, which is called My Courses. But some other platforms like this, the learning management systems that are common one is Moodle, right? Do you know of other ones, Maria?
We have Canvas. So I know that. So My Courses is part of D2L, Brightspace, which I don't know in your institution UNAM which one is being used, but usually Moodle is one of the most common ones. So that's within the courses, you can create, for example, a quiz. It doesn't have to be graded or anything, but just the fact of having students do it. There are other tools that, because I've been working with a lot of students lately for different projects, and they mention a lot Quizlet, for example. I've never, but they keep on saying they create their own study questions, right? For them to test themselves. That's a beautiful example of retrieval, because again, it's forcing them to, okay, let's quiz ourselves, let's ask those questions and then recall what was introduced in class.
Right, and another one that's very good is actually Anki, because that they have the algorithm has spaced retrieval built into it. So it helps you to actually categorize it automatically to, I know this well, I don't know this well, and so on. Or I need to review it more frequently. Yeah, it works like
free,
Quizlet.
Right? Sanjan, is free.
It's for free. Yes, it's free too, Anki.
Professor Juarez?
Oh, yes, thank you very much. I would like to make a couple of comments that I always share with my students. And one of them is I help them realize, if they haven't found yet, they are C1 students, wanted to be English teachers. Some of them are already English teachers. And I always tell them to try to realize what one of their learning styles. No, and I give them examples like, well, if you think you cannot stay sitting for a long time, then maybe you are kinesthetic. If you are kinesthetic or tactile, maybe you need to write down, not type in, but write down whatever you would like to learn or remember. You may take a picture or you may type it in, but it won't work for you because you are tactile or kinesthetic. So on the one hand, I help them realize about their learning styles. And on the other hand, I always tell them that in order to remember better or to help them retrieve the information faster, they should involve different senses. So I ask them to write down, to read out loud, to have a partner read to them. Also, I ask them sometimes to draw, but they need to have different kinds of input. So one student reads the information to them, for example, and then they read the information to somebody else, and then they may illustrate, make a mind map, they may stand up and draw something on the board. So they need to involve different senses so that they can recall faster whenever they have to do it. That's what I wanted to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Juarez. Now it's time to say thank you very much to our distinguished presenters for sharing such valuable insights with us today. Empowering learners, boosting agency and engagement in language learning with retrieval practice is truly an inspiring topic. And your contributions, doctors, have given us much to reflect on today. I would also like to thank our audience for joining us and for your thoughtful participation. We hope today's session has been enriching for everyone. On behalf of our faculty, the Language Center, and the organizing team, we wish you a wonderful day, and we look forward to seeing you at our future academic events. Las invitamos a abrir su micrófono y entonar nuestro Goya. Por mi raza hablará el espíritu. Acatlán es grande. Acatlán engrandece. México, Pumas, Universidad. Goya, Goya. Cachurrarra, cachurrarra. Goya,
Universidad. Un, dos, tres.
Acatlán.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for
so much.
having us. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you,
Thank you, Ana
Sanjang.
Maria, for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye. Have a nice evening, everyone.
Yeah.
And
Have a nice
Mari
evening.
also.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye, Sanjang. Bye-bye, Maria. Bye, Sandra.
Thank you so much for having us.
Hasta pronto.
Hasta pronto.
Chao.